I don't know about you, but even though I'm an old fart, I like to be read to. So maybe you do too. So I do this little show I've written a lot of short stories. I'm going to read a few for you today. And just in time for Thanksgiving. I never stopped to think. I didn't know it was unusual. On Saturday mornings at 7, my dad woke me, and 15 minutes later, we walked the 1 block to the Q17A bus, rain, shine, or blizzard. We got off at Jamaica Avenue and walked the 2 blocks to the BMT train. We exited at Elder Avenue and walked the 5 blocks to my dad's tiny store at 105 Moore Street, Brooklyn. Rain, shine, sleet. I never stopped to think it was unusual that my dad never took a day off, no matter how bad the snow. I never stopped to think it was unusual for my dad to have me work for him most Saturdays, even though I was just 13. I never stopped to think it was a dangerous neighborhood. I never stopped to think it was unusual that he couldn't afford a security guard, and so I had to do it, although it was just for show. He said, "Martin, just watch. If you see them start to steal something, just look them in the eye and yell. Don't try to stop them, they'll beat you up." On the 7th day, Sunday, he, my mom, my sister, and I duplicated the trip, except that our destination was not the store, but the Lower East Side of New York, where my father bought the merchandise for the store. I never stopped to think that it was unusual that each of us had to carry the boxes. Over the years, 3 times in the middle of the night at home, we got a phone call from the police saying that my dad's store had been arsoned. I never stopped to think about it until, soon after an arson, with the store still smelling of smoke, a customer told my dad that they do it because they don't like white people, let alone Jews, having a business in their community. I never stopped to think that despite my dad being a Holocaust survivor, who with 3 dozen men escaped by digging a tunnel from the pit where he had been forced to burn Jews that the Nazis had killed, firing squad, my dad never complained, never. Finally, I stopped to think. I asked, "Daddy, how come you so rarely talk about the Holocaust?" He stiffened, which he rarely did, and he said, "Martin, the Nazis took 5 years from mine life. I won't give them 1 minute more." I have had the privilege of being career coach to some of the world's most successful contributory people, as well as to some strugglers. The successful ones are far more likely to follow my father's next words. "Martin, don't look back. Always take the next step forward." That was, I never stopped to think. The Basement Club. I love sports, which is cool, but I also like reading, which isn't. Even worse, I like reading aloud and being read to. When I admitted that to another kid, he said, "That's for babies." And that shut me up. But I had an idea, a read-aloud club. What if I asked a couple of kids who I guessed might like reading aloud? I guessed wrong a couple of times. For example, I would have thought that the kid who always wears political t-shirts would like it, but he just shrugged and asked if I was coming to the protest. I tried a shy girl, figuring she might be bookish, but she just said, "No thanks." But then I realized an obvious choice, Bella, who at recess usually sits on a bench reading. She said, "I'll try it." I thought 3 kids would be enough for a club. Who'd be a good 3rd member? We have the bookworm, and me, the jock. So I thought about the cool kids and asked one who surprised me. "Cool, I'm in." We agreed that the best time to meet would be on a Saturday morning at 11, when all of us would be awake and our parents wouldn't ask too many questions about where we were going. We could have met at one of our houses or even outside, but we thought it would be more adventurous and would get us a huge number of books to try if we broke into the school library. So at 11 that Saturday, we walked around the outside of the school building and checked all the windows. All were locked except one, a small window leading to the basement, where the boiler room and the janitor's desk are. I guess the janitor leaves it unlocked, the window, because it's too small for a grown-up to crawl through, or maybe to make it easier for the janitor to open the window to let the heat out from the boiler room. But we were just fifth graders, so we were small enough to fit through. Well, two of us were. I was a little too big, but the other two pushed my ass through. I made it, barely. We figured that on Saturday, no one would be there. But as soon as we got in, the janitor raced in. "What the hell are you doing?" We explained. His face softened, and he said, "I'll let you use this room under one condition, if I can join your club." I smiled and said, "Okay, if you read the first excerpt of whatever you want." The janitor opened his desk drawer, pulled out a short story called The Jokester Janitor, and read this excerpt. "I'm a janitor, but could I add some spice to my life? I Googled how to be a stand-up comedian, and soon I was doing open mic nights as the Jokester Janitor. That provided the spice, and at parties, when they ask what I do, I can say I'm a stand-up comedian. That's a conversation starter. When they ask if I can do a bit for them, I oblige, for example. I was looking for a new janitor job and was late for my job interview. I overswept. A few of my janitor friends formed a band, the Bleach Boys. When I got sick of being a janitor, I tried to get into NASCAR, but they rejected me because my car went broom, broom. So I got a job as a garbage man, but was worried there was no training. The boss said, "You'll pick it up." Now, how rich am I? Filthy rich. Well, now it was my turn. I admitted that, like the janitor, I didn't have the patience for books, but I liked short stuff, especially about sports. So I had brought Red Smith's description of a National League playoffs last game. So it was the Dodgers ball game 4-1 and the Dodgers pennant. So all right, I better get started and beat the crowd home. That stuff in the ninth inning, that didn't mean anything. A single by Al Dark, a single by Don Miller, Irvin's pop-up, Lockman's one-run double, and now the corniest possible sort of Hollywood schmaltz. Stretcher bearers plodding away with an injured Mueller between them, symbolic of the Giants themselves. Out went pitcher Newcomb, and in came Ralph Branca. Who's at bat? Bobby Thomson. Branca's first pitch was a strike. The second pitch? Well, when Thomson reached first base, he turned and looked toward the left field stands. Then he started jumping straight in the air again and again. Then he trotted around the bases, taking his time. Ralph Branca turned and started for the clubhouse. Bella, the bookish, read the first couple paragraphs from the book Never Let Me Go. It's about people who were cloned so they can donate organs. The person speaking to the reader is someone called a carer, who cares for organ donors after they've donated. Donors usually last just 2 or 3 donations before they die. Here is the excerpt. My name is Kathy H. I'm 31 years old, and I've been a carer now for over 11 years. That sounds long enough, I know, but actually they want me to go on for another 8 months. That'll make it almost exactly 12 years. Then I'll become a donor. I do know they've been pleased with my work. My donors have tended to do much better than expected. Their recovery times have been impressive, and hardly any of them have been classified as agitated, even before the 4th donation. It means a lot to me, being able to do my work well, especially that bit about my donors staying calm. I've developed a kind of instinct around donors. I know when to hang around and comfort them, when to leave them to themselves, when to listen to everything they have to say, and when just to shrug and tell them to snap out of it. Cool Dude was the last reader. He chose an excerpt from the book, The Fault is in Our Stars. He took a deep breath, getting up the courage to read, when there was a loud knock. Police, open up! We explained what we were doing. The janitor nodded and, in a stroke of genius, the janitor asked the cop if he would like to see. The cop stared at us. We were scared, innocent looking. The cop sighed, and Cool Dude began. Late in the winter of my 17th year, my mother decided I was depressed, presumably because I rarely left the house, spent quite a lot of time in bed, read the same book over and over, ate infrequently, and devoted quite a bit of my abundant free time to thinking about death. Those words came from 16-year-old Hazel Grace Lancaster, who continued, "Whenever you read a cancer booklet or website or whatever, they always list depression as among the side effects of cancer. But in fact, depression is not a side effect of cancer. Depression is a side effect of dying." Cool Dude teared up. We all did. Even the cop, who, when he gathered himself, said, "Okay, let's just say the janitor let you in." And wiping a tear, he padded out, more like a perp than a cop. We've just scheduled our next meeting and wonder if we should invite the cop. Anyway, that story was The Basement Club. Next story, Nun Number 7. It's kind of sad, but I want to be honest with you. The best thing in my life is that I usher at the local community theater. It's touching to watch those dedicated volunteer actors replace their ordinary lives for a couple hours with being an actor. But I was way too shy. Why is ushering a big deal to me? You see, I have no personal life, and my job is clerk at the court's traffic ticket department. I was especially excited today because it's opening night for the biggest production the theater has ever done, The Sound of Music. I knew the theater would be packed. But this afternoon, I got a call from the play's director. He said, "There's been a COVID outbreak among the 6 nuns in the play. So now we're down to just 1 nun. I've tried everyone, but I've had no luck. By any chance, could you fill in? Just walk behind the other nun and you'll be fine." I explained that since the 4th grade, when I played a tree, I've never been on a stage and I can't sing. He said, "No problem, just move your mouth up and down. Nun number 1 can sing." How could I say no? But I was sure I'd look scared instead of angelic. I could trip on my habit. When I got backstage, after getting into my habit, they handed me a candle, explaining that to create a churchy feel, the lights will be turned down, and the other nun and I will come on stage holding a candle. Now I had another reason to be scared. If I tripped on my habit, I'd drop the candle and burn God knows what. Actually, it went fine. Yes, as I walked, I left too big a gap between the other nun and me because I was afraid of tripping, but oh well. I'm writing to you from the first night cast party. The director asked if even when the other nuns come back, I'd be willing to be nun number 7. My new life. In the theater. Anyway, that story is Nun Number 7. Eating out alone. I made progress today. You see, my research project is to identify the true basis of altruism. Of course, that'll take years, but today I eliminated 2 blind alleys. In basic research, that's progress. It's the day before Thanksgiving, and no one invited me anywhere, so I want to give myself a treat. So I thought I'd reward myself by taking myself out to dinner. I can afford a nice place, but don't like getting ripped off. So I decided among a hole-in-the-wall Thai place and a diner. Because I wasn't sure what I wanted to eat, I chose the diner. Lots of choices. But which diner? The food's a little better at one, but if they attached a pleasure meter to my brain, I'd get more pleasure from a quiet restaurant, even if the food isn't quite as good. The waitress, hostess's face, suggested she was tired, and not just with the day, but with life. She murmured, "Sit wherever." Where to sit? I like quiet, but also a bit of people watching. The place was almost empty, but there was this couple. They looked like they'd been married a long time. They weren't talking, just eating. I decided to sit just far enough from them that they might not notice my peaks. The waitress followed me down to the booth that I sat down and put the menu down and asked, "Something to drink?" I don't like alcohol. It tastes yucky and has too many calories for too little relaxation. Just water. I'm sorry. Why do I need to apologize? But I do. I guess I feel bad that that good diner is empty and that if I order small, her tip's going to be small. I'm overthinking. I always overthink. It's key to my success, but also to my inability to relax. I looked at the menu and was faced with my perennial dining dilemma. A cheeseburger and fries would taste best, but a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. So I forced my eyes to the fish section. But I don't like fish, except deep-fried fish and chips, and that's no help. I looked at the salad section and thought, nope, it's virtuous, but I don't like most salads. Besides, I can make my ideal salad at home. Something breakfasty, even though it's dinner? I do love French toast, but all those carbs. And I'd feel a little embarrassed ordering breakfast food at night. I went back to the burger section and compromised. Turkey cheeseburger with sweet potato fries. I forced myself to slow down and enjoy every bite, instead of as usual thinking, reading, or writing while I'm eating. Why do I care about being in the moment, even when eating? Not just to increase the pleasure of eating, it's to create a memory. How much life is memory? A reasonable amount. No, the turkey burger nor the sweet potato fries, even with ketchup, weren't great, but good enough. I'll remember this nice is occasionally the right word, this nice dinner. The memory will make me feel good. Not enough does. I remembered my bargain with myself. When I'm no longer hungry, I'll save calories and feel good about myself and the meal if I leave just 2 bites on my plate. I did. At that moment of resolve, I poured pepper on the half-dozen remaining fries and pushed the plate away. Then, before she came with dessert, I had a minute to muse. What do I want to think about? My next day's experiment? Who I'd like to ask to come with me to my next dinner? Maybe that Indian place, Vec in American Canyon. Great food, inexpensive, although it is a hole in the wall. Actually, I think, I prefer going out by myself. I feel like checking my email. If I were with somebody, it would be impolite. The waitress picked up my peppered plate and asked, dessert? Terse, as though each additional word would be tiring. Again, I compromised. I'll have bread pudding, whipped cream on the side, and I promised I would take my half home. That way I would get the first 2 bites, which are the best bites. Of course, I should have predicted that I wouldn't have the discipline to leave half, but I did leave a third, better than usual. Every so often I peeked at the couple. They said only a few sentences the entire time. If I ever get married, will we end up like that? Now I was done, and somehow, even though the place was nearly empty, I felt I should leave, like I'm freeloading if they won't get more money from me. I gave myself just a minute to breathe and asked myself to think of something, anything. All I could think of, though, was the to-dos when I leave, so I left. But as I write this, I have another thought. They say that eating out is a poor use of money. After the hour, you have nothing to show for it. On the other hand, the same could be said about watching a movie or listening to music. Perhaps more even than permanent stuff like that vase in my living room. Hours eating like this are worth it. I think I get greater pleasure in toto from the vase, which quickly blended into the woodwork. I think I'll take myself out to eat more often. That story was Eating Out Alone. Revolt of the 90-year-olds. Husband and wife, Aldo and Carmela Giannini, had been the chefs at Sunny Rest Home for 20 years. But a company convinced the owner of Sunny Rest to switch. It would save 30%. And the Gianninis cried and returned to their family home in Palermo, Italy. The first week with that new caterer was great. For example, fettuccine alfredo with prawns in honor of the Gianninis. But after the Golden Week, and the Gianninis were back in Italy, the food slowly changed. A typical meal? Soup we thought had to be Campbell's. Beef and bean burrito for the main. And for dessert, Hostess Twinkies? Most of the residents shrugged, but I got a few to agree to go on a hunger strike. Of course, they asked, for how long? I don't want to die because of this. I said that I thought it would be short because I would tell the owner that if he didn't bring the Gianninis back, I'd go to the media. I could see the headline now. Scrooge fires beloved chefs at senior home, from Scallopini to Sloppy Joe's. It took exactly one meal before the owner asked the Gianninis back with a 10% raise and their job for life. They said no, but the owner, knowing how emotional the Gianninis are, said, "The residents would so love for you to make them their Thanksgiving. They aren't going to have many more holidays, you know." And that moved the Gianninis. I'm writing to you as we finished our Italian garnished Thanksgiving dinner. Turkey, moist, with all the trimmings, and for dessert, tiramisu. That story was Revolt of the 90-Year-Olds. So, those stories are from my book, Favorites. I do hope you enjoyed them. I'll see you next time for another section of stories, another I Read Aloud to You. I'm Marty Nemko.